Bluey, Blue Eye Samurai, and Case of the Golden Idol. This is Staying In.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Auld Lang Syne. Yes, thank you, Sam. Happy
Let's
New Year.
just get that out of the way. Should all
do you know the lyrics? Do you know the lyrics, Sam?
Yeah, of course I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't. I've never known the lyrics.
Well, it's kind of one of those songs where I don't think... I mean, I do know the lyrics, but I don't think many people do. But I just don't think it really matters. It's more of the... It's more of the act. It's more in the act. And in the... You know, you can just go... Auld Lang Syne.
It's the same with the 12 Days of Christmas. 5 gold rings. So I'm recording in a different place this evening because I've had to wait around for a package to arrive.
Okay.
I've had a hell of a day. Thanks for asking. I have been struggling to get this package delivered to me because the app is awful.
You're starting the new year off.
I know.
With a bang.
I thought, okay, right. It's still not been delivered to me. I'm going to go straight into their sanctum. I'm going to go to the depot. I'm going to drive 30 minutes in my car and pick up the package. I turned up there and there's no one on the desk. You have to ring a little phone number. Beep, 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 beep. And you speak to essentially what sounds to be some kind of call centre, but it's in the building somewhere. And I have to give them my postcode and everything. And I wait, and they said, okay, do you mind waiting? Okay. I wait like 10, 15 minutes, have a couple of rounds of not words on the phone.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And there was an awkward moment where another bloke came in for his package and there's only one chair in the room and I'm sat on it. It's like, oh, do I? Do I defer? Or no, I was here first.
Older, younger?
I couldn't tell. That's the age I am now. I couldn't tell. And then somebody comes to the desk behind. Oh, yep. Brilliant. And said, okay, brilliant. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I logged it on the app to come pick it up from the depot. Cool. Yeah, sorry, it's already on the lorry heading to your home.
Oh, brilliant.
Right. Okay. So I get home and I could see the app had been updated. It had updated after I'd left the depot saying that it was on its way to me. So clearly they'd forgotten to put it in the lorry beforehand and panicked and chucked it in the lorry and sent it to me rather than giving it to me there. And you get a window, 20 past 6 to 20 past 8. And I'm not allowed to let it be left with a neighbour. I'm not allowed to have it in a safe place.
Yeah, just come on. It's
exactly.
It's 2024. Like
exactly.
I just think like if we learned one thing from the pandemic, it was just to be a little bit more loose when it comes to
completely
leaving a package and not having to sign for everything.
It's interesting you say this because literally 10 minutes ago, package turns up. The bloke sheepishly there walks up and says, "Oh, you had a long drive today, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, I did."
What? Did he know?
He knew. I don't know how he knew. And I said, I started to complain, saying, look, it's ridiculous. You weren't allowed to leave it with a neighbour. You weren't allowed to leave it in a safe place. Spoilers, it's a purse for my sister I bought for her birthday. You can easily slip it through the letterbox. And the bloke said, yeah, I know. If it was me, I would have just left it. But unfortunately, we have somebody at the depot who goes through just all the pictures we take. We have to take a picture of it with a door open to show that it's got there. And he says, between you and me, I just have a pair of wellies in the lorry. So occasionally I'll just put them outside somebody's house and just take a picture. So it looks like somebody stood outside.
That's brilliant. I almost thought you were going to say he had like an Ardaman style like set in the back of his van.
He spends hours making miniatures of all the packages he holds.
Yeah. What I love is that no one at his place of work has twigged that every person that he goes to, the majority of them will be in wellies that receive packages.
Brilliant.
Always the same pair of wellies.
That's great.
So I've not started the new year too positively, I'm not going to lie. New Year resolutions time.
Okay.
I'm gonna tie something together from last year.
Oh.
One of my New Year's resolutions this year is to be a better loser.
All right, yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that.
Yep. And you may want to also, Sam, take a leaf out of my book as well in that regard. But
What?
Yep. Oh, you're not as bad as me, but you're a little bit bad. You're not as bad as me by any stretch of the imagination, but occasionally I'll say it. Well, why did you do that for? But I'm terrible, and I need to try and work out why. And I'm going to use this year to do a little bit of soul searching to try and get to the nub of that matter.
Yeah, play to play, not play to win.
Exactly, Sam. Yes. So that's my. Other than obviously getting married, that's going to be a big.
Yeah, but that's going to happen. That's not really a resolution. That's just going to happen.
That's more likely that I'm going to get married than I am going to get disgruntled from losing a game. So, Sam, I'm going to be a better loser. What are you going to be this year?
Well, a better loser apparently.
Well, only a little bit. You're fine, more or less.
Just a little better loser. I'd not really thought about resolutions for this year actually. So I feel like I've been doing really well on my time cap app. I think if I remember correctly, my resolution from last year, I don't know how long I've been doing this actually for. I wanted to establish good habits. Basically setting myself, I've been doing this for 2 years.
Wow.
Is by setting myself basically to listen to a new album every month from an artist I've never heard of before, to play 10 hours of video games, have 4 hours of audiobooks, finish a book/comic every month. The comic bit was very important there because it kind of gets me out of a hole.
You could bash one of them out in 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's just like, yeah, fine. I'm not going to make it. Let's just bash out a comic.
Half 11 on the last day of the month.
Garfield.
and then watch a film every month. So maybe I add or I amend one of these things before the end of the podcast.
Yeah, because I think that's quite a nice amount per month. I don't know if you want to add anything on top of that. I think it's a one in, one out thing, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. I think I might get into that app this year, actually.
Build a new habit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think something that just keeps a track of things, because that's the thing in January. You start with these wonderful ideas. You know, the amount of times as a child I started a diary and then it peters out mid-February and I never picked it up again when I was a kid. So I knew exactly, I've got a very good knowledge of what I did every January for when I was 10 to 14 years old. But that was it, really. Dan, what about yourself? New Year's resolutions?
Well, I think last year I had something similar to Sam in terms of kind of accomplishing things and kind of new habits and wanting to finish things. So I think I wanted to finish games and stuff. I don't think I quite managed that. I think I wanted to, 6 games I'd said, like one every 2 months.
I remember that.
But my New Year's resolution this year is, I think, going to be quite a tough one.
Yes. Now, I remember you telling us this is a big one. This is done.
Yeah, because I've realised what I tend to do, I'll have, say, certain series or something that I've maybe watched in the past, and I like to just kind of have it on in the background. So, for example, this year I watched kind of House, which I'd watched a lot of before. Maybe not all of it, but I'd watched most of it. So I watched House, or stuff like comedies. Like in the past, I've watched Big Bang Theory, or gone through the whole series of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and those kind of things. So I've ended up rewatching them, and so I just spend a lot of time watching stuff that I've already watched. So I thought, okay, for 2024, I want to only watch new stuff. Okay, so
and this is stuff that's new to you. It's not stuff that's coming out in 2024.
Yes, this isn't stuff new to me. Now there are some caveats to this. The two main caveats being, one caveat, like, I'm not going to stop my wife watching something because I've already seen it. So, like,
imagine?
in that environment, like, if we're watching something together, then it can be something I've already watched.
What is there a loophole there where your wife could start something and then leave the room and go and do something else?
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's not that strict. I don't have to kind of just pause it, cover my eyes, and wait for her to re-enter.
I mean, that's how you get a complex.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, like, you really want to watch some Parks and Rec this evening. Oh, wife, could you just put this up? Oh no! And now she's left the room, and now you just sat watching Parks and Rec for the evening.
Dan, how do you feel about Sam's little extract there from what he thinks married life is like for you? Do you ever holler to your wife and just say, "Oh, wife,
oh, wife's here"?
I was trying to be respectful of boundaries.
That was like Robin Hood in Shrek. Oh, merry man.
What it has meant is I recently bought the 4K Blu-ray of the Lord of the Rings Extended Edition, which I haven't seen in a long time. and I decided to buy it because I saw it for a good price, and I'd only ever got like the DVDs of the original theatrical version, and this is kind of the extended and the theatrical in 4K, and it is beautiful.
Oh yeah.
But it did mean I have seen those before, so it did mean either because I'd been reading the books, I'd been listening to the audiobooks, I'd been going all in on it, but I thought I'm not going to be able to kind of read the books and finish the audiobooks before New Year's, so I'm having to watch those kind of now prior to New Year's, just so I can enjoy them, just so I don't kind of break it within the first few weeks of 2024. So that's my challenge. It's a tricky one. So games, TV, film should be all new things.
Well, speaking of new things, we're going to do something a bit different for our New Year's special.
We are. I'm excited about this.
I am as well, because this is one of my favourite times of the year, the beginning of a year, the end of a previous year, because particularly online, like lots of different content providers that I follow, like on YouTube, will do their like top 5 or top 10 of the year. So particularly for board games, it's a really great way for me to kind of just mop up and get a sense of what the new hotness was for the year, what were the big games, because sometimes I keep, up to date with what's going on in board games, but other times I will just lose track of it, really. So a top 5 list or a top 10 of the year I find very, very useful in terms of just understanding, okay, cool, these are the current trends in this particular kind of cultural enterprise. So we've done this. We've each done a top 5, and a bit like what Dan was saying there beforehand. These weren't all things that came out last year, but these were things that are new for us last year.
Yeah, these were the best things that we enjoyed last year.
Yeah,
Pete's not with us, but we do have his list as well.
We do have Pete's top 5.
We do.
He kind of missed the brief ever so slightly, either intentionally or swerved right around it. But
are we going to do all the 5s, then all the 4s, then all the 3s, then all the 2s, then all the 1s?
Well, mine's not in order, really. It's just
mine is. I spent a long time getting mine in order.
Nah.
Well, Sam, given the fact that you were the architect for the reason why we're doing this, we're all inspired by you having your top 10 or top 5 of different things you have. So books, comics, games, films, TV series, cutlery, I don't know, etc. Do you want to start? So what is your number 5 that isn't your number 5?
My number 5 that isn't my number 5.
Yes.
So my number 5 that isn't the number 5 is the Incal by Jodorowsky and Morbius. Sort of the middle part of 2023, a friend of mine who we started to do a bit of a cultural exchange where like I would lend him something and then he would lend me something, and it was really, really nice because like over the course of several months I was lending him lots of comics and books that he hadn't read, and he was doing the same with me. And he was like, have you ever read the Incal before? And I was like, I had no idea what the Incal was. And he said, well, it's a graphic novel written by Jodorowsky. And I've heard of Jodorowsky before because of the legendary Dune. So Jodorowsky was this filmmaker who was one of the first people, or the first person, to really try and figure out how to put Frank Herbert's Dune onto the screen and make a film out of it. And there's a really, really, if you've got like an hour and a half to spare, the documentary about him trying to put this film together. It is and remains in my mind probably one of the biggest creative acts of creative ambition I've ever heard of in my life. So what happened was he basically brought all these people together, created this book, which was a shot-for-shot, screenplay, both the screenplay and storyboard of exactly how the film would pan out. I think he envisioned it to be about 5 hours long or something like that, or maybe even longer. And basically couldn't find anyone to buy it, couldn't find anyone to finance it. So what he ended up doing was he took all of those ideas and turned it into the Incal. And basically, without the Incal, we would not have The Matrix. Without the Incal, we would not have Fifth Element. Without the Incal, we wouldn't have Akira or Blade Runner. like it is like the for a lot of creators and for a lot of sci-fi work, for many people it is just the complete zenith of all of those, and it's just, as a piece of art and a piece of sci-fi, it is bewildering, it is vast, it is deep, it is incredible, and I think at some points it's very nonsensical. It's very nonsensical and like barely hangs together, and sometimes I think it's being weird for weird's sake.
Right.
But as a sheer work of creative ambition, I've not read a graphic novel basically like the Incal.
Wow, and that's your number 5.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, your number 5 is quite similar to this, isn't it?
No, so my number 5, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So this came out back in 2019, which was a lifetime ago. And then I was just looking for something kind of, it's just something to play, and I'd stumbled across it, and I found it cheap, maybe like 15 quid or something like that. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. It looks interesting. And as I'd looked into it a bit more, I'd seen actually, yes, it's published by EA, but it's actually made by Respawn, who obviously made kind of Titanfall and Titanfall 2, which I absolutely loved. I thought was fantastic. I was like, okay, well, this is a bit more interesting then. I am a big fan of this company. They make really good action adventure games, so I'll give it a go. I'm a fan of Star Wars. I'm not kind of like insane fan, but I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I've seen all the films. I've watched most of the TV shows. And so I thought I'd give it a go. And I was really, really happily surprised by it. Like, it's one of those things where you go in with, I wouldn't say low expectations, but kind of just like, I'm just going to have a nice time, and just, if it's a bit janky at times, that's okay. I'm not expecting it to be mind-blowing, but I started playing it and he was like, well, this is kind of reminding me of like Uncharted and stuff. And that's kind of, for me, that's a very high bar. If I'm getting reminded of those kind of games, that's really good. And then certain kind of mechanics of it, you start to think, oh, it's a little bit kind of, it's hard in the sense of like, not to the extent, but similar like your Souls games. So there is, some of it's are really hard and it's quite technical. And just the more I was playing it, I was like, this is just really good. It's a really well told story. It stars,
the world's blandest actor.
It stars Cameron Monaghan, who probably most people know from Gotham. I mean, to be fair, most people probably know him from this now, but a lot of people would know from Gotham, who played the Joker in various incarnations. I've never really watched Gotham.
They couldn't use the name Joker.
Yeah,
they had to call him something. Jeremiah something. His name. Was, but yeah, he was the Joker.
Jeremiah Oka.
Yeah.
So yeah, he plays kind of Carl Kestis, and They very wisely, which is something that kind of always annoyed me about the Battlefront games, they very wisely said, okay, they do the thing that Andor does and the Mandalorian does to an extent of kind of like, okay, we're in this universe, let's just point the camera in a slightly different direction and let's see what's happening over here. And you get some really interesting characters, some inventive worlds, similar to kind of Guardians of the Galaxy, which I really like this year as well, where the worlds are really interesting and kind of creative. And they do a lot with it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing the sequel, kind of Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which got very good reviews.
Yeah.
So I'm highly expecting, if we do this top 5 next year, to have kind of the sequel to this game in my top 5 next year. So yeah, it was a lovely surprise. And yes, that's my number 5 for the year.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, Dan, because I've literally been playing this today. I've been playing it for the last few weeks or so, and you're absolutely right. For me, it gave me the nostalgic tingles of playing Jedi Power Battles back in 1999, because all I want to play as, get that feeling of, is being a Jedi. And here you do in spades. You can kind of use the Force to pull stuff towards you and fling it back. So when you pull a stormtrooper towards you, you're dragging them towards you, and then you can fling them into other people. You can do like flips in the air. You can get like a dual-wielding lightsaber. And it does a really elegant thing, because you're really just cycling through a small selection of planets. And it feels a lot to me like one of the newer Tomb Raider games. The second one of the newer ones. I think it's
Rise.
Rise of the Tomb Raider. And like that Tomb Raider game, it has some genuinely really good puzzles. And I was thinking, oh my word, I wasn't expecting this. I get to be, but also solve some puzzles, a la a Tomb Raider game. This is great, and I got it for free on PS Plus. This is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I've got to come to Sam now and say thank you, Sam.
Why?
For recommending me The Free Body Problem, because
yes,
the second book in the series, Dark Forest, is my number 5 of 2023. The book came out in 2008, so it's an old book, but it's probably my favourite science fiction book I've ever read, I would say, quite frankly. I've actually given my book to a colleague who also loved it and has just devoured it. I know you've spoken about it briefly on a podcast, but and obviously I've only read the first 2 books of this epic trilogy, and yes, there is a Netflix series coming, I think this year, which is an adaptation of the series. But this particular book, it's about how the planet Earth is preparing for an alien invasion, except that invasion is not going to arrive here for another 400 years, and how humanity puts together a plan despite the fact that this alien race is able to monitor everything they do and say, and they have to put their faith as a planet in 4 people. 4 people who each come up with a plan, these are the wall facers, and any of the choices they make, any of the demands they make, cannot be questioned by the UN. As random as they may sound, because obviously the person can't explain their plan because the aliens will know what it is. And just yourself, also as the reader, being kept out of the loop, trying to work out what are these people doing that is going to save humanity. At the same time, a nail-biting invasion, which it's astonishing that it's nail-biting considering it takes place over 400 years, is taking place here. Yeah. And I found this book absolutely breathtaking and propulsive in a manner that I don't think the first one was as much, even though I enjoyed the first one. No. The second one just leaps into gear and has genuinely made it a very, very enjoyable read. So thank you, Sam. That is my number 5. That is The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu.
Pete's number 5, in no particular order, was Home Battery, A Dream Come True.
Pete's basically got a massive battery on the side of his house.
Just a big Duracell.
Yeah.
Number 4, 1 word, 2 syllables, Eega.
I'm so happy you picked this one.
So you talked about this in episode 169 of the pod. This is one of my favourite directors. I've not watched it yet. I'm waiting for the moment to watch it because I think I should probably watch it with one of you. In the same way that when I started watching RRR, I said I've got to stop this and watch this with somebody because
I think it needs to be experienced with someone.
I'm so thrilled this is one of your top 5 because that emboldens me more to go and watch it this year.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look back at some of the films I watched this year, you know, like Oppenheimer and Guardians of the Galaxy and all this kind of stuff, and I just think there is, and The Killer, which I think is, which was nearly a late entry into my top 5 because I think The Killer is an absolutely astounding piece of work. But
I've not seen it yet.
Neither have I.
But I've just got a soft spot for David Fincher.
Oh, me too.
Anyway, but I think Eega is just. I think, you know, RRR had such a massive impact on everyone who I know that has watched it, and since then I've been really eager to watch some more of the work of SS Rajamouli and Dan. Was it that no one else could make it and it was just me and you for a weekend?
I think so. Yeah, I think Kris couldn't make it anyway, and then Mother Nature came in and said, no, Pete, you can't go either. So I was just like, well, I'll still come up. We'll have some fun. And I think we were just deciding what to do. We kind of like, we could watch this. We'd both kind of...
we could watch Eega.
Yeah, because we'd both kind of... It's one of those things where when you've watched RR, you do want to kind of say, well, what other stuff has he made? And then you stumble across this film, and as soon as you read the synopsis, you're kind of like, oh, I have to see this. And then we were both like, should we watch it? We're like, yeah, okay. Little did we know what we were letting ourselves in for.
I mean... how do you sum up this film? Basically, a guy falls in love with a girl, classic tale. Another guy gets jealous of said guy, kills the guy who's fallen in love with a girl, and then that guy gets reincarnated as a fly, and it is in fly form that he enacts his revenge.
I mean, it is the Cat of Monte Cristo, isn't it?
In a world where we had, man versus bee, and which was atrocious, Eega manages to do something with its premise, which is utterly bonkers and just, an idea that would otherwise be just thrown straight out and no one's going to be financing it, but somehow made it into a compelling, I think the best way to sum it up is that me and Dan, through watching this film, looked at each other many times and just burst out of laughing.
That's what you want. Yeah.
But it was never at the expense of the film. We were always laughing with it, never at it.
It knew exactly what it was doing.
It knew how ridiculous it was, but for some reason it also came across as entirely plausible.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how SS Rajamouli gets away with it.
Yeah.
Like how he balances tone and walks this knife edge with, and I've only seen 2 of his movies, but I bloody well hope they're all the same. But he just balances this knife edge between making someone fight a tiger single-handedly not come across as silly or puerile, but yet also appreciating the audience's capacity for the suspension of disbelief and not completely taking that for granted either.
It's not like it's a film for kids, like Man versus Bee.
No.
Laid itself to try and be, but it's very much an adult. It's a very silly, childish premise, but it's very much an adult film treated with an adult tone.
That's a great way to put it.
How long is it? Because RRR is 3 hours. Is Eega of similar length?
I think it might be a similar length.
Bloody hell!
Yeah, it's 2.5 hours, and I remember speaking to Dan and going, "They've made a film that's 2.5 hours long about a man who gets reincarnated as a fly and enacts his revenge." And you do not, and just like with RRR, you really do not feel that 2.5 hour runtime. And you guys know me, and if I see a film is over an hour and a half, I've already Dr. Star off it. It's just, I just find it infuriating where any film needs to be longer than an hour and a half, hour 45 tops. But Eega, it's incredible.
My number 4 is a film with a similarly silly premise, but the tone of it is wildly different to Eega. And this is also something that we discussed on the podcast. And we actually discussed it very recently, only about 4 or 5 episodes ago, 6 episodes ago. And this is the absolute delight of a film, which is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
Yes.
Episode 185.
Indeed.
There you go.
So for anyone who kind of hasn't heard me kind of wax lyrical about it way back on episode 185, this is a film kind of directed by Dean Fletcher Camp, written by Dean Fletcher Camp and Jenny Slate, and Jenny Slate also voices the character of Marcel. And Marcel is a shell with shoes on, and it's a kind of faux documentary where a guy has moved into an Airbnb. The guy played by Dean Fletcher Camp, he moves into an Airbnb and finds already living there this small shell with one kind of silly eye and shoes, who talks and is kind of childish and naive and kind of full of wonderment, and talks about the community that she has and all these weird and wonderful things. She lives there with her grandmother, and I don't think I've felt so kind of happy from watching a film, and so kind of utterly surprised from watching a film, because it literally came out of nowhere. I had never heard of it before. It's based on a number of kind of short films that they do that you can find on YouTube. And I was looking for something to watch, and I glanced over because it was on Sky Cinema. It was on there, and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, it's to your point, Sam. It's like 90 minutes." And my wife is often, she likes watching films, but she likes to go to bed quite early. So you can never watch, if you want to watch a film during the week anyway, it kind of needs to be a short film. So I said to her, how about this? It's a 90-minute film and it sounds weird and wonderful. She was like, yep, that's fine, we'll watch it.
That's all it takes.
And like the first 5 minutes, you're kind of going, what is this? This is insane. And then suddenly kind of you find yourself laughing uncontrollably and just in a state of wonderment for the next 85 minutes, just with a smile on your face. And it's been a long time since I had a film which just kind of grabbed me, and it's not trying to do anything more than it is. It's just beautifully made, beautifully animated, and just an absolute delight.
My number 4, actually, I discussed very early on in the year, actually, episode 168, actually. I'm a big fan of murder mystery novels, and I have tapped this rich vein of a kind of a subgenre of literature called honkaku, which is a mystery writers club that was particularly popular in Japan in the late 80s, and still is popular, I should say. And this was a group of writers who are bonded by a love of what they view to be the golden age of detective fiction. So quite lean novels, which are often like locked room mysteries. So thinking about like UK listeners, similar to what David Renwick was emulating with Jonathan Creek, for example, which is a series I also love. And as a child, my dad would always kind of pose us as kids these little kinds of like locked room mysteries for us, to pass the time and stuff.
Would he actually lock you in?
No. He'd talk about it as a thought experiment.
Like, slide notes into the door.
And
to get out of the room, you must answer my puzzles 3.
And so I've always grown up loving like that. I like that feeling of feeling like an idiot and having that moment of realization where everything clicks into place. Like last December was another thrill to play the Exit Advent Calendar, which has become a wonderful Christmas tradition. Every day feels like that. Yeah. So this is the Decagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, published in 1987, but only printed into English in 2015. So that's why it's kind of new for us English speakers. And it's like Agatha Christie's And Then There Went On. There's an island. People are getting killed off. It doesn't make sense because they seem to be the only ones there. So it must be one of them, mustn't it? But there's also something happening on the mainland. Another mystery there that's talking about trying to solve a mystery of this island from a year ago before. So these two separate mysteries are kind of occurring simultaneously, and you're invested in both equally. And the payoff is great. This is a great holiday read of a book. I read The Millhouse Murders, which was their second book they did in this kind of series. I didn't enjoy it as much, but The Decagon House Murders, absolutely loved it. Generally went into one of my favourite murder mysteries of all time, and one that I will always happily recommend to people.
And Pete's number 4 is, it just says Germany. Germany.
The nation of Germany. I presume our trip away with Pete.
Yeah. A glorious time. Lots of memories.
Yeah.
That's no particular order, remember.
We spoke about on episode 182 of the pod, our sojourn around Germany and Pete disposing of his boxes.
I'm sure that's when he says lots of memories. That's what he's thinking. Right, I'm going to rattle through my number 3 because we've spoken enough about this game, and I mean I've played lots of incredible games in 2023, and we've spoken about a lot of incredible board games, but finally playing Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition was a momentous occasion, and for it to live up to every single bit of hype. Yeah, I mean, it is a combination of the game being exceptionally good and being able to share that with the two of you, Pete, and 2 other really good friends of mine, and for us all to have that as a shared experience over one day is truly something exceptionally special. And whether that will ever happen again, I don't know.
Of course it will, Sam. Of course it will.
But yeah, it's it lived up to every ounce of its billing. being one of the best board games of all time, and I loved every single hour of the 10 hours that it took.
It was 10 hours
for us to play.
Gosh, wow!
Yeah.
It was an extraordinary experience. It genuinely was, and I think I would love it for this. I would really love for this to be something annual because, I mean, how often I can't remember the last time really where, other than obviously what we have, Sam War Boys, that actually have an event
based around a game
that feels an event, and everyone treats it with that degree of reverence. This is an event. I mean, it had its own playlist.
The game is incredible, but I think part of what I include in my top 5 was that experience with all of you. Meanwhile, on Dan's number 3.
See, I was struggling to think of it. I was looking at all the options that I'd got down, and I was thinking, okay, well, what have I enjoyed this year? What have I watched the most of this year? And as I was thinking that, I was like, well, because of the circumstance I find myself with having 2 small children, the show I've watched more than anything else is Bluey. And
okay.
Bluey is a phenomenal TV show. Not a phenomenal kids show. It's a phenomenal TV show.
Agreed.
And I may have seen some of it prior to this year. But I feel like this year, perhaps because my second child is now loving it as well, so it's on a lot more, and I can use that as a way to get the rubbish shows that she wants to watch off. I can always put Bluey on, and she'll go for that. But obviously, Bluey is kind of, at its core, directed at kids. It's on the CBeebies channel. It's on Disney Plus as well. But it is a kid show. It's an Australian animated show about a group of family of dogs, and Bluey is it's 2 sisters, Bluey and Bingo, and Bluey's the main character. But what Bluey does as the show is quite incredible. It offers kind of comedy, which is genuinely funny. You have characters which are genuinely funny. You have characters who you like and you kind of want to watch. But every now and again, you'll find yourself watching it. And to be fair, I will happily watch it. When the kids are watching it, I will happily watch it. It works on a number of levels. The animation at its core is brilliant for really young children. Brilliant for you really young children. As kids get a bit older, they can pick up on the stories, they can pick up on the jokes a bit more, they can enjoy it. And then as you get older, there may be some of the wittier stuff, older kids can enjoy it. And when you get to the adults, there are certain episodes which are quite profound, and they deal with very serious issues, but done in a way that it's all about the kid's story, but for an adult watching it, like, for example, these are some of the issues that Bluey, this kids' TV show, has dealt with. It deals with kind of parental insecurity, people being insecure about how they are as parents and are they doing a good enough job. It deals with kind of growing up and independence, using classical music. It uses Gustav Holst's The Planets as part of that. That's the Sleepy Time episode. It deals with kind of the passage of time, the concept of heaven. It deals with female infertility. It deals with childhood trauma. All of this stuff, and it does it in a really nuanced, really subtle way. Bluey is just an incredible TV show for anyone to watch.
And it's not the only Blue thing in the list.
Oh, look, see what he did there.
He did, yeah. I did spot that.
I want to talk about a series that came in towards the end of last year, where I almost did a little bit of a Sam Turner. I watched one episode and I said, this is incredible. This is the best thing I've seen all year. I don't need to watch anymore. This is Blue Eye Samurai.
Yes.
And I've noticed in my top 5, there's a kind of an Eastern kind of thread running through it in an interesting manner, really. I've actually got the Akira Kurosawa Samurai collection, which is going to be something I'm going to be watching all of this year as well. And I watched this first episode. I fell in love with it. This is on Netflix, and it comes from a husband and wife team, Amber Noizumi and Michael Green. Now, Amber Noizumi, this is their first production credit, their first writing credit. But Michael Green, he wrote the script for Blade Runner 2049, Logan, and randomly all of Kenny Branagh's Agatha Christie films.
Really?
I know, it's really interesting. But it's also directed by Jane Wu, and Jane Wu has a really fascinating background. They used to own a comic book shop. They cut their teeth as a storyboard artist for the Marvel films. So they did a lot of the major action sequences were storyboarded by them, which if you look at the fight choreography in Blue Eye Samurai, it's really on point. And they talked in an interview, Vanity Fair, quite candidly about the gender politics of being a female storyboard artist amongst a load of blokes who would try and outdo each other with trying to make their camera angles more dynamic than each other's in terms of action. And they said, look, I'm not going to bother getting involved with that. I'm just going to really focus on the emotions of the character in this particular action beat, and that determined the framing of the shot. And that's what made them stand out. And thinking about Blue Eye Samurai, one of the things that really sticks out for me is its fight choreography. Second to that, what you've got is this husband and wife team who've had this idea for this drama in their head for like over 10 years. Because this is a historical action animated series, 8 episodes, each one's about an hour. It's set in 17th century Japan, where essentially the country has closed its borders. So any kind of foreign presence is viewed with real hostility and revulsion. And what you have as the protagonist is Mizu, who is a half-white, half-Japanese, blue-eyed swordmaster who embarks on a quest for revenge. And that's what this premise is, really. But but both Noizumi and Green, they had a child. And in an interview, Noizumi talks about the fact that she became really, to start off with, quite preoccupied with the colour of her daughter's eyes when they were born. Because, you know, most babies are born with blue eyes, and over time that changes colour. But it didn't happen for their daughter. And it gave her a pause for thought, thinking, why am I so fixated on this? And that kind of sowed the seeds for this protagonist and this story, really. And then late in the day, they decided actually animation is where we think this how this story should be told, really. And I'm so glad they went down that route, because the animation is absolutely gorgeous in this, isn't it, Sam?
It's absolutely stunning, and it manages to get such a fluidity to its animation style, and it's not just its action scenes, but also just in how like the whole scenes play out and how characters move and how they talk to each other and the shots that they pick. Like, it is just such a wonderful thing to watch. It's just like, you know, it's just like watching watercolor on the screen for an hour. Like, it's just such a pleasing thing to watch on the eye.
It's cool, it's slick, it's poignant, it's blood soaked, and it's also quite erotic. Tick, 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 tick. But I'm not as curious as to obviously find out Pete's number 3, which was a Steam Deck. Have you heard that Pete's got a Steam Deck? Have you got one, Sam, as well?
When did you get that? You've never mentioned that.
But the Steam Deck for Pete has changed the way he engages with games. So I'm assuming that you can play them on the toilet now.
Yeah,
basically
that's
yes.
it. Yeah.
Speaking of number 2s, Dan.
And mine is something that I've tried to encourage all of you to watch. And so part of the reason I'm bringing it up again is because I think it is, you guys should just all watch it. It is How To with John Wilson. It's really difficult to describe what How To with John Wilson is and how good it is, because it sounds exceptionally banal, and it sounds exceptionally contrived as well. And you really have to see it to believe it and to understand how earnest and how genuine it is as a documentary series. The way that I thought of it was that it's basically How To with John Wilson is what if Louis Theroux was forced to make his own documentaries without a camera crew, and basically only had ideas such as, so instead of investigating, for example, Scientology, it was how to cook the perfect risotto, or how to cover your furniture. Like, John Wilson has the same acerbic and wit and way of engaging with the world as someone like Louis Theroux does, but he just chooses to shine the light on the ordinary and the commonplace. And in that, he finds a level of beauty and humour and understanding that I've not really seen in any other documentary. And how he puts his films together is it's just remarkable. Like he must have filmed pretty much his whole life for however many years, and he must meticulously label every single thing he films, because whenever he mentions something in a script, he's got a piece of film that either is a metaphor for that action or is a perfect analogous representation of what he's talking about. So if he mentions something falling apart, it'll be something falling apart in that he's seen in New York. Or if he talks about someone cooking risotto, it will be of a chef, not knowing he's been filmed by John Wilson cooking a risotto. Like, the level of heart and candor and earnestness in them is remarkable. And just through the conversations that he has and the images that he gets, he just is able to bring out the beauty in even the smallest things. He's able to make the ridiculous seem normal. And they are just remarkable short little documentaries. And if I was going to recommend anyone watch any, there's two. There's one, How to Split a Bill, where he ends up attending a referees convention that is the most unruly and unhinged convention that has ever been committed. Like, there's people like stealing stuff at this referees convention. Like, they cannot referee themselves. Yeah. But it's just like one of those beautiful things that it's just like no one's ever paid attention to, and he just manages to shine a camera on it and capture the beautiful things in life. And then there's another one, the last episode of the series, which is How to Cook a Perfect Risotto, which happens just as COVID's hitting. And it's one of those in the moment analyses of what was happening at that time, and trying to find even the beauty in what was a very, very horrific moment for all of us, and especially someone who's living in the heart of New York City. But yeah, they're incredible pieces of work, and I urge everyone to find them out and watch them.
Can I ask, because when I read the premise of this, I've not seen any episodes of this. It sounds right up my street.
Yeah, you'd love it. You both would love it.
Like, part of me was thinking, I wish this was a podcast. Because I've listened to a few podcasts. You've recommended me a few, Sam. So, for example, I think of Heavyweight. I think of The Mystery Show, which kind of starts off with this. Start off with one premise. I want to solve this mystery. How tall is Jake Gyllenhaal? Or I want to kind of meet up with my high school girlfriend and see why this, and then you just end up going down this kind of labyrinthine kind of journey. You have no idea where you're going to end up. That's exactly how each of the episodes go on to. I think there's one which talks about how to cover your furniture, and he ends up down this rabbit hole trying to speak to a man who's trying to regrow his own foreskin. And when you're talking about and stretch it over a sofa,
and when you're talking about do you need the images? Just for that one episode alone, there is one bit that I literally had to pause the whole film because I could not stop laughing to how, you just watch him talking to this guy, and you just and you can feel the edit coming, and you can feel the cutaway coming, and you're just like, he's not, is he? He's not. Tell me the next image is not going to be. Yep, there it is. and he's in typical Louis Theroux fashion, he's talking to this guy earnestly whilst he's explaining in full graphic detail the efforts he's going to try and reclaim his foreskin, as he calls it.
Reclaim.
Yeah, it's just had me in absolute tears. It's just the most incredible documentary series. It's such a special thing.
And truth is stranger than fiction, isn't it? Really, I mean.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
My number one and number two have changed repeatedly. I've gone back and forth on this. As things stand right in this second, my number two is the TV series of The Last of Us.
Now, I completely forgotten that this came out last year.
Yeah, so this
completely
was an astonishing piece of television. Now, The Last of Us, this series is based on the first Last of Us game, and I think the first Last of Us game is probably my favorite game of all time. I think it is the best executed narrative of any game I've ever played. And this show manages to be the best adaptation of a video game ever. I don't think there's much question around that. But also, in its own right, be a fantastic TV show. It uses visuals from the game very effectively at times. So one of the first examples of this is an early scene from the game is where they're trying to escape in a car, and the camera is kind of in the middle of the car and it's rotating. And you kind of, as soon as they get in the car in the TV show, you know that's what they're going to do. And you're kind of like, okay, is this going to work? Is it not? But maybe it's because the game is so cinematic. It absolutely works, and you are in that kind of environment, and you're there, and you feel it. It's when I was watching it, I was just kind of astonished as to how well they were picking and choosing the moments and what to dwell on, what's not. Because in the end, the game itself is a shooter. Most of the time, you run around with a gun shooting monsters, and yet in the series, there's very little of that. To the point that when it does happen, it becomes shocking, which is brilliant. And at no point do you feel there's no threat, even though, surprisingly, the zombies actually the zombies are the infected, aren't as big a presence in the TV show as visually anyway, in terms of being on screen, as in the game, because obviously they're there as a constant in the game. But in the TV show, they are kind of sort of in the background. There's this ongoing threat, but because you're not being hit with them every single time, when they do show up, suddenly, okay, this is trouble now, and you feel that threat immediately. The only other point I'd make is there is an episode of this TV show, which is the third episode, which I think is one of those things where suddenly everyone is talking about it. And I don't want to go into detail because I think it's an episode that needs to be experienced, and even if you've played the game, you will kind of not be prepared for it, because it's the one time it takes a real kind of deviation away from the game. But it is just a beautiful piece of television that should be admired and discussed kind of everywhere. Obviously, Sam, would this have made your top 5 if you had remembered it?
I don't know. I think for me, it was, and will this make sense? The Last of Us for me was a very great achievement, but I didn't think it was a very good TV show. I thought it was a great TV show, and I think it was great what Craig Mazin achieved with it and the ambition, but it just, for me, it was lacking. Was it as good as Chernobyl? No.
Every now and again, I get kind of a bug. Same with Uncharted. I want to kind of play those games again. The TV series kind of sated that, but it was still a fantastic, as I'm saying, an achievement. But for me, it was a fantastic TV show, and there are some narrative deviations. Kind of some. I think at the time me and Sam discussed, there was one in particular that me and Sam both really objected to. Small deviations, that was, but there are some, and then there's one big deviation, which is the one I kind of alluded to, which is one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen.
I mean, my number 2 is also what I feel to be a very good TV series. It's an adaptation, but it is a much looser adaptation. I would say it's probably more inspired by its source text, which is The Fall of the House of Usher by Mike Flanagan. which he spoke about on 186 of the pods. At the same time, he spoke about Twilight Imperium, incidentally. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I spoke about it quite lengthily in episode 186. But in my opinion, it's the second best thing Mike Flanagan's ever done. And I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan. And for me, what clinched it in terms of where it would be in my top 10 was the fact that at the end of every episode, me and my partner had to literally kind of say, look, no, we can't. We have to go to bed. We've got to go to work tomorrow. We can't just watch the next episode. And, you know, we'd speak to each other the next day, go, oh my gosh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder who's going to go next. I wonder how it's going to happen. Oh my word. What does this mean? What does that mean? Oh, really, really good. I think, you know, horror for me, when it's coupled with mystery, is how I really enjoy that genre. And Flanagan is a master of this. So I highly recommend it. For any of you, any listener who's never been exposed to Mike Flanagan's work before, start with Hill House, then do For the House of Usher.
Because this is my, like, if you're going to watch How To with John Wilson, I'm going to watch some Mike Flanagan.
Okay, yeah. We'll watch them together simultaneously. We'll have our headphones in, Sam. Pete's number 2, The Rise of House Wellington, was his work with the Bristol RPG. So,
yes, this is the RPG that he runs in his local library. So, playing Troika, that was his number 2.
But drum roll, please, Sam. Your number 1.
Do we do number ones, or are we doing honourable mentions?
Yeah, that's a good shout. Honourable mention, Sam.
So my honourable mention was the game that I wanted to mention because it's a game I played the most this year. I've put about 30, 40 hours into this game. And you might be thinking, oh, with that much time in it, why isn't it your favourite game? Well, I'll tell you for why. But this is Marvel's Midnight Suns, a game made by Firaxis, released this year. And you may know that one of my top 5 games of all time is XCOM 2, made by Firaxis. And I was like, oh yeah, come on, give me that Marvel, give me that Firaxis strategy. I am in. This is, after Marvel's Spider-Man by Insomniac, the best Marvel video game that you can play. The characters are excellent. The how they depict the characters of Marvel is superb. How they interact with each other, and the animation stylings and the voice acting is all top-notch, superb stuff. Like, it's a very, very impressive package. And how the game works, it's all turn-based strategy, but it's all done by card play. So each character has their own deck of cards, and you use that deck of cards to defeat members of Hydra. However, the reason why it's not made my top 5,
I think I know.
What is it?
Is it the downtime stuff?
It's the absolutely 100% the downtime between the good stuff is infuriating. To give you a bit of a slice of life, I'm currently having to, in between battling members of Hydra and battling against people like Sabretooth and Skullbones, whatever his name is, and, you know, trying to recruit Wolverine into the crew, all that exciting stuff. I'm also a member of a book club with Captain America, Blade, and Captain Marvel. I've taken such a massive umbrage with this book club that I've forced Blade now to walk around with a t-shirt that says book club on it, which dramatically reduces his level of cool. Yeah. But the downtime, it, like the game loop is you battle, you join a hangout with someone from the Marvel crew, and then you have to go to sleep, and then you wake up, and then your day starts again. You do a bit of research, you buff up your deck, you battle, you join a hangout, and then you go to sleep. Like, it is one of, I think, it is one of the worst gameplay loops that I think I've ever encountered. And it's every time having to know that I've got to battle once and then fall asleep and wake up again before I can have another battle. Yeah, it's so annoying. If there was an option to just do the battles and not go to sleep, and it cost £10, I'd pay £10 quite easily just to remove it from the game.
Wow! But that's your honourable mention, Sam. What's your number 1?
Yeah, so my number 1 is Case of the Golden Idol.
Such a good game.
Which which is it's just the game that has stuck with me throughout the entire year when I first played it to now. Even so that over Christmas I bought the DLC to play over Christmas because I thought like Christmas is a wonderful time for like mysteries and ghost stories and things like that. So the Case of the Golden Idol is, and this is the world's dumbest but smartest video game genre, is a Metroidvania. So it's a game in a similar fashion to something like Curse of the Obra Dinn.
Return of the Obra Dinn, one of my top 10 games of all time.
The Case of the Golden Idol. I mean, I think the art style is not necessarily for me. It's not in terms of what's nicer to look at, Return of the Obra Dinn or this. It's hands down Return of the Obra Dinn. But for me, the puzzles and how they're laid out and how you solve them in Case of the Golden Idol, for me, I felt better, more comfortable, and more supported in this than I did in Return of the Obra Dinn. Like I think this is the better deduction game. It's just superb, and I think the way it handles its puzzles and the way it handles its story. I did a recap just before I went in to play the DLC over Christmas, and the story and how detailed and how winding and how magically constructed it is, and how detailed and how complex it is to get all that across in a single 2D piece of artwork. To get all that across and to get your head around it in a puzzle deduction Metroidvania game is a superb piece of work. I can't wait for their next game because it's 3D.
It's just been announced.
And
last year, wasn't it? Last year.
So I just don't know what it is that it's going to be, but I know I completely trust them in terms of consistently making you feel like the smartest person alive. And any game that makes me feel like that always gets a thumbs up for me. But Case of the Golden Idol is absolutely superb, and if you're looking for a good deduction game or a good puzzle game for this new year, then you could not do any worse really than
That's
that
a
one.
great recommendation. Dan, your honourable mention.
My honourable mention is the third series of Only Murders in the Building. So we're big fans of the Only Murders in the Building series here. We've talked about it quite a long time ago now, obviously when it first came out, the first series. Kind of a murder mystery with Martin Short, Steve Martin, Selena Gomez. It's smart, it's funny, but for me, kind of the third series, which came out this year, really kind of took it to another level. Part of it is I'm a sucker for a musical, and this series is all based around the kind of the production of a musical and the production of the theatre and all that stuff, which again, right in my wheelhouse, right up my street. So I just think it was a real step up, and the first two series were great. There were bits that I didn't like about the third series, so it wasn't kind of perfect. I think they kind of stepped away from the three leads kind of working together. I'd like to have seen a bit more of them, but kind of it seems weird to say, kind of, it's a surprising thing, but Meryl Streep is in it, and she is astonishing. Like, Martin Short, Steve Martin, Selena Gomez, they're great. Like, the people in this show is great. But when Meryl Streep walks on screen, you just see how she's on a different level to everyone else. And I've never really noticed it kind of so distinctly before. And she's just phenomenal. Whether it's kind of the scenes that she's in, like, I was constantly trying to work her out. I was trying to see kind of little looks she was doing. Was she like, and that leads into that whole brilliant murder mystery idea of you can't really trust anyone. And obviously you've got Meryl Streep. She's going to be a big part of this. You don't get Meryl Streep if she's not going to be a big part of it. So you're kind of thinking, oh, is she the murderer? Along with her, you've got Paul Rudd, who's also brilliant in it. I'm not saying he's at Meryl Streep's level, because literally she's on another level. But like, you can see how successful they're being, that for this third series they're about to bring in these big heavyweights. Like, these are not like Meryl Streep doesn't really do television. I don't think I've ever seen her in a TV show before. And this is like a cute little comedy. This isn't kind of The Crown or like when that came out, this big mega budget kind of the like Rings of Power, that kind of thing, where all the money's been thrown at it. This is a really small kind of is it a small fan base now? I don't know. But I was just kind of, I don't think with any of the other series, I've watched clips after having watched an episode. I've not done that for the previous series, whereas this one, like, I'd be absorbing kind of, I'm wanting to go and rewatch clips. And that helps the fact that there are songs in it and the performances in it, and I will want to watch those again because they're wonderful. But I don't think I've talked about the series more than I talked about this one. My wife has never really watched it before. But she's a drama teacher. She's very into kind of theatre, and so she was drawn in by the kind of the concept of it all being based around the theatre. And she watched the first episode, having never really wanted to watch it before. I tried to get her to watch it, and she'd always said no. She watched the first episode and was like, "Yeah, maybe we could go back to the start and watch all of this." So we literally maybe it was like 3 episodes into the third series. We went right back to the start and said, "Okay, episode 1," and then all the way through. And then by the time we got to the end, we then got the whole of the third series to be able to watch, and it was just an absolute delight. It didn't quite crack my top 5, but I just absolutely loved it this year.
But Dan, what was your number 1?
My number 1 was also kind of a follow-on series to another show, and this was a show I talked about at the end of 2022,
episode 164 of the pod,
and that show was The Bear, and this is The Bear season 2. When I mentioned earlier about The Last of Us, I talked about that one episode being like one of the best episodes I've ever seen, and so it's quite strange that within this series as well, I have the exact same thing. I was an episode of this series that I watched, and I was like, that was one of the most incredible episodes of television I've ever seen. Whether it's the writing, it's the performances, it's everything. I don't know how this show can be directed. It's so chaotic and it's so tightly wound, and you watch it and you just think, I'm just watching improvisation, because it's so kind of natural and every single person is. The reason there's a key reason why I think this is possibly one of the greatest. This is definitely my favorite show of the year. I can't think of another show that's had this reaction in me. As I got to the end of this series, there were several moments where I either said something or shouted something at the screen. I had a physical reaction to things that are happening. And I don't do that. That's not me. I don't react that way to kind of TV shows or films or anything like that. I can enjoy them. I'm really happy. Like, I'll watch Endgame. Like, I'll watch the Marvel films, and like, yes, I can really get into and that stuff. But like, there were times I was shouting at the screen, and I was on my own. I wasn't watching it with anyone else, and it was like so surreal that like I was gasping. Like, literally, on my hands were kind of covering my face at certain times. This series is better than the first series because it has more propulsion. The whole first series is kind of setting the table, to use the kind of the dining analogy, where the main character of Kami returns to this small little restaurant and tries to take over because his brother has committed suicide. So he's taking over and trying to fix it and trying to say, okay, can I turn it into something better? And then this second series is all about kind of, okay, we're going to make this into a high-end restaurant. How do we do it? And that's the whole propulsion for the series. So you have that kind of journey. It's not just existing with these characters and kind of things happen. Whereas because you have this propulsion, you are carried through it, and they can introduce kind of more background to the characters and expand the characters and expand kind of the families. And there are flashbacks in different bits and pieces. And it is just... I know I don't think you guys have watched The Bear. It is a very intense show. It is a very intense show, but the payoffs are unbelievable. I mean, talking about kind of the cast for Only Murders, it's not at that level, but you have cameos in this series from like people like Olivia Colman, who just shows up. They're attracting people because people want to be a part of this. Actors want to be a part of this because it's so... I genuinely think it's a special show. I really do.
honorable mention and my number one are actually in the fantasy genre, because I've noticed that last year, nationally and internationally, I think it can be agreed that it was a bit of a bin fire globally, to a degree.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically, it was one of the best years of my life, really. But I've noticed that in terms of the stuff I've kind of engaged with media-wise, it tends to be stuff that has been more escapist than something that's, say, set in the kind of the present day or in the kind of everyday world. And so I think it's quite interesting that both of mine are escapist genres, really. My honourable mention is Lord of the Rings Journeys of Middle-earth, which is the big box of Middle-earth stuff, as Sam referred to it in the last episode of the pod, that I picked up at Aircon. As I was kind of love bombed by both Sam and Pete after I arrived there, because I've been on the fence about purchasing this game for a while from Fantasy Flight, because it is quite expensive. However, the beautiful bring and buy sale at Aircon, which is the gift that keeps on giving, it gave us the last card of Twilight Imperium. It gave us Twilight Imperium.
Certainly did.
And Sam, you and I have played this. It's an app-driven game. We've spoken about it on a previous episode of the pod, episode 176. Now we know how to play it, because I've been teaching Sam the rules wrong, which made it incredibly hard for us, because we couldn't understand why we weren't winning any levels we were playing.
Yeah, I did think that was quite
still having a good
strange,
time.
yeah.
Still having a good time. For me, it's been an absolute joy. I can play it solo. I can have a game going with Sam. I can equally have a game going with my old neighbour. It's saved on my tablet, and the game just remembers all of those games, and I can jump back into any of those at any point, really. There's DLC I can download with a game I've got. In the future, I may want to plump for an expansion, but there's still parts of Middle-earth I'm yet to discover. So that wasn't the honourable mention for me. My number one, though,
nice.
has been there pretty much since the beginning of the year, episode 173 of the pod. That's Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, from Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. This film, it's not going to set the world alight. This isn't The Bear. This is not the case of the Golden Idol. It's paint by numbers to a degree. It is the quest structure narrative. A band of misfits get together to save the world in a kind of fantasy realm,
Yeah.
But with the names of Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, who did Game Nights, which I know is a film that you and I both love, Sam. I really enjoyed this
absolutely.
film. It's really funny. It's the kind of humour that I really gravitate towards. The music by Lorne Balfe is stunning as well in it. There's almost as much love and attention given to the soundtrack as what Howard Shore does for Lord of the Rings. Every character has their own motif. And the fact that, you were talking about Eega beforehand, that you're kind of laughing with them, the director, rather than at them.
Yeah.
That's Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. It's not doing that Big Bang Theory thing of making fun of nerds and laughing at nerds.
No.
You're actually laughing at the situation that these characters are in, and every actor in it is fantastic. And I've watched this film so many times this year. I showed it to my future father-in-law in Portugal with a dodgy internet connection, which meant that the film would pause every 2 minutes. So it added an extra 30, 40 minutes on the runtime. But even he had a good time with that out there. So I had an absolute blast. I'm going to be going to see Pete soon. I may subject him to this. I've got a bottle of Baileys for him.
Oh, do. Just put the bottle of Baileys down, and just he'll watch anything then.
But yeah, so Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves was my number one. And kind of coming full circle, really, it's quite lovely. Pete's honourable mention was Twilight Imperium, 3rd edition, / Drive with Dan, which is lovely. Because you saved the day, Dan. We're not going to talk about the Curse of Wellington because we've done that. Pete now has a Selenite wand. We've spoken about this. Let's draw a line under it for 2024. But he had a lovely time in the car with you. But what was Pete's number one, Sam?
Pete's number one was a game he spent over 200 hours playing.
I don't get it.
He played Marvel Snap for over 200 hours in 2023, and he's still loving it, apparently. So that was his, not in any order, but...
He's played more than half an hour a day for the last year.
I played one game of that, and I knew I never wanted to play it again. 200 hours.
Right. So that is it. That is our top 5 things.
I think it's quite impressive, and it kind of goes to show kind of how good our year has been. That genuinely, we all came up with our list separately, and like of our top 5s, there are 20 things, and every single one of them was different. There was no duplication of our top 5s at all. So
and also, I think it was quite interesting that there's quite a few things that we hadn't even mentioned on the podcast before.
Bluey.
Exactly. Bluey.
Yeah. So, I think it just says a lot about, the podcast, but it also says a lot about us, that I think these 5 things are very, taking some Pete's, for example, like I think some of them are very, very personal things and very, very things that have meant something to us on a different level other than, oh, this is really cool, I'm going to share this with my friends, which says a lot about, what we value most about the podcast, but also, I think the top 5 list says a lot about, what's been good for us individually over 2023.
Well, listener, if you've got recommendations for the new hotness or things that perhaps we didn't get to in 2023 or new upcoming things in 2024, that could be games, that could be comics, that could be books, that could be films, that could be television series, it could be batteries.
I really want a lot of new things, so please do.
Dan in particular.
Send in yours.
So please do let us know. Where can you find us? You can find us at stayinginpod@gmail.com. That is our email. Or you could slide into our DMs. Is that still a thing that is used, that expression? On Twitter, at stayinginpod is where you can find us there. Also at Facebook at the same handle. Instagram tends to be our kind of more popular avenue in terms of seeing images of things we've been getting up to. Sam's been doing sterling work recently. As a recording, talking about his hefty unboxing of Mage Knight, which you and I are going to play this week. And with this massive list of top, as you say, Dan, 20 things here, I mean, my Spotify playlists, I'm going to be adding some lovely, juicy beats to that. So you can find that on Spotify. That's in, if you go into our Instagram, there's a lovely little link there which takes you to all of a portal, essentially. It takes you to all the various kinds of channels for our show, really. And if you want to get in touch with us, ask any questions, or just let us know that you like what you're hearing, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you for listeners in 2023 who did get in touch and say, oh, thank you for that recommendation. Have you thought of this as well? Thank you. That was really, really lovely. I do think, though, this is the time. I know, Dan, you've got thoughts. Do we need to come up with an outro that we're going to stick to for 2024? A closing line.
A new sign off.
At the moment, we've been fast and loose with the all right then, depending on who's editing. Yeah. So can we categorically decide on an outro that says, okay, end?
End. See you on the beach.
I mean, a lovely kind of paraphrasing of Churchill's.
See you on the beach.
See you on the beach.
I mean, nobody's put through anything else yet. So
I mean, the kind of the marketing team would be like something along the lines of "Thanks for staying in" or something like that. Let's get corporate.
That's too stuffy, isn't it?
It is a bit too. Made me feel a bit icky. That did.
Just before we finish our first show of 2024, just to say, do have a great year. I hope you really get from it what you want to. If you'd like to see us in 2024, then we are going to be at Aircon, and we'd love for you to join us if you can. But if not, just remember to keep staying in your hearts. But we really value it, and we hope that you have an absolutely awesome ace 2024. Right. See you on the beach.
So-